All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the something teenth, maybe the 20th MainSpring office hours, the office hours. We're trying to give perspective on FileMaker, both from a developmental and a business side. Today's more business, more concepts than it is actual, development tips, tricks, things like that. So without further ado, I'd like to just get started with kind of a thought that I've had, using FileMaker as a strategic weapon within your organization. So first, let me give you a little background. MainSpring has been in the FileMaker ecosystem since '96. I got started in it. We started the company in '93. In '96, I was wandering through a CompUSA. And my good friend Robert Dudley was a FileMaker BAM, and he was leaning up against a pole in the CompUSA building with a little desk, demoing FileMaker, probably 2, 3, somewhere around there at that time. And asked me if I wanted to start becoming a developer of FileMaker, and I knew nothing about it. And I was a Mac guy, so the fact that it was an Apple product was pretty entertaining to me. So we signed up, became a platinum partner probably in the early 2000s. Whenever they released that program, we were one of the inaugural members of it. MainSpring is a 65-person IT company. We do government support, we do managed services. So FileMaker was a really good fit. I always look at IT having kind of 2 layers. The bottom layer is the stuff, the workstations, the printers, the email, the internet connection, and keeping that working. And then FileMaker is all about scalability, being able to do more with less, and not having to hire more people. So I took over the department in 2019. Kind of blew it up and rebuilt it on a different mindset, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. And this presentation is basically based on hundreds and hundreds of conversations that I've had with prospects, with clients, with other developers of using FileMaker. And really, it comes down to, the expansion and adoption of FileMaker within organizations. I've had several questions, and it always seems like the feedback comes, how do I get IT to take it seriously? Or, you're talking to somebody at a cocktail party, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember FileMaker from 2002. I think it was version 4. And, we really didn't use it other than just a very small part of our business. I actually ran into some folks who abandoned FileMaker, who have subsequently come back to FileMaker, and that's kind of an interesting little story. But they would say, we hate FileMaker. And when I first heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hang up and, start thinking about it. Well, when I started hearing people talking about how they hated FileMaker, I started asking questions because I'm a curious guy. And the first question I asked them is, when's the last time you updated FileMaker? And, they were consistently, they were on FileMaker 6, FileMaker 12, many, many versions behind. And then the second question I asked them is, what have you done with it lately? Have you done any improvement on it? Because it is a low code, no code environment that you can easily adapt to meet your business goals. And they would tell me things like, we haven't done any development in 5 years, or we haven't done any development in 10 years, things like that. So pretty interesting that that would come back. And then finally, I think some of the issues within IT departments is there's no kind of Microsoft certification around it. Yeah, there's a developer certification that you can get with FileMaker. But if you're going into enterprise systems, or if you're going to other groups, there's a bit of a reluctance with IT departments, because it is it's a smaller ecosystem, and an IT person can't really get certified or have a way that they can understand and get the platform cooking. So what tends to happen is whoever uses FileMaker is typically the champion of trying to get it into the IT department and get it into the business. So, some of the stuff that we do as far as hosting and licensing and coaching and development and everything, I think has helped, because we're hosting about 250 FileMaker servers now. We started in 2019. Mike Burgee is actually the product manager of our hosting. And we've taken a lot of Mac Minis out of the corners of IT, out of IT rooms where they just didn't want to deal with it. So, we've made it easy, pull it out, put it in a rack, and virtual machine it up, and away we go. So that's kind of the backdrop of this presentation. And really what you've signed up for is, I jokingly say it's kind of the rantings of one guy. This is not anything that's sponsored by FileMaker. I know Brad Freitag very well, the CEO of FileMaker. I know Ryan McCain very well, the VP of Global Sales. And these are some of the things that I talked to them about, and direction. So if you hear me say something, it's not necessarily that they agree with it. It's just things that I've seen and the way that I've gone. So the biggest hurdle that we face, when we're trying to use FileMaker is any kind of strategy within an organization is what the heck it is. Like, you're in a meeting, you're talking about FileMaker, and somebody says, well, what is FileMaker? Well, FileMaker a couple of years ago tried to solve that problem by declaring it a workplace innovation platform. And that just, my opinion, it just put more kludge into it, because it was like saying, yeah, we're a four-wheel drive truck. Well, what does that even mean? Like, what can you do with a four-wheel drive? What can you do with that kind of technology? So the thought was, come out with the workplace innovation platform. If you get the Gartner chart, there's a chart of economics and ease of use, and everybody wants to be high and to the right, so that it was really good economics and low code, no code kind of stuff, and compared to things like Airtable and some other things, FileMaker came up really they did well, and they were able to pass the Gartner report around and talk about what they did. The challenge with that, though, is the workplace innovation platform is really more of a concept than a product. Like, it doesn't tell you what it does. It just says, kind of what it is. And you would still get battered with, well, what is it? And I thought we were a little more successful back in the day when we would say, hey, remember, Microsoft Access? It's just like that. So then you get the comparison, but Access sucks, because if you put more than about 5 users on Access, the jet engine breaks down. You got to replace it with SQL, and now you're into a whole other thing. And by rallying around innovation, what some studies, and I found this article that was super interesting about how innovation is desired in organizations, and innovation is, people want innovation with their organization, but the challenge is a lack of process kills innovation. There's really no way to get innovative unless you have a process by which to get there. And they discussed a little bit about how sales and marketing, went from carpetbaggers with snake oil up through, the 1920s, where it was brochures and marketing and callers out. People like Carnegie had a big influence on the sales process. So as process got around sales and marketing, it really became predictive, to the point where there's tools out there like HubSpot and Salesforce and things like that, based on clicks, we get those ads in Facebook now. We get those ads on our browser when we look at something in Amazon. It comes over. So the innovation over there has been, in sales and marketing, has been really good. because they've got process around it. But in manufacturing and things like that, it's a little bit rougher. So I don't think that the workplace innovation platform really worked. And I think self-described FileMaker has admitted that it doesn't work. Claris has, because they've kind of downplayed it. I had to go through a whole certification process of the WIP, the workplace innovation. And I would say about 6 to 8 months ago, I was on a call with a FileMaker, and they basically said that that's not really what we're doing, and they de-emphasized it. So what I like to think of FileMaker is, and this is again here we're starting the rant of one man, is it's really kind of the every man's ERP. Now, you may not know what an ERP is. It's the fancy word enterprise resource planning, but it's basically all this stuff. And if you think about FileMaker, I can think of clients that we've built CRM and sales systems for, and distribution systems, and time and projects, and the holy grail is dashboards and finance, manufacturing, purchasing. The fact that it's low code, no code is great, because you can develop these things very inexpensively as comparatively to other custom systems. But the challenge with FileMaker is it practically does nothing out of the box. And I think that FileMaker themselves, Claris themselves, has been trying to solve this for a long time with the starter solutions that they include. But the challenge with those is they can develop early cruft in them. If you pull one, you try to use it, there could be whole areas that you don't use. So it's a little tough to keep dragging that stuff around, as well as it may not work exactly how you want, and it's harder to it takes more hours to move your system to what you want, as opposed to just starting from a blank piece of paper and going out. I think that the biggest advantage of FileMaker is the low cost continuous improvement. It's a platform that you can continually improve the three things that continually change, and that would be the environment, the people that you're working with external to your company changes all the time. And then your processes change based on those two things. So FileMaker can really get in there from an inexpensive manner and take care of that. So it's almost like, what isn't FileMaker? And that's kind of the joke that we always have here is people always ask us, well, what can FileMaker? Can FileMaker do this? We're on meetings with folks and they're talking about features. Can FileMaker do X? Can it do Y? Can it do Z? And the answer is usually yes. I would say it's 95% yes. The only no's come when you say things like, could I develop Microsoft Word in FileMaker? Well, the answer is yes, but the cost would be $200 grand, $300 grand to put something like that together. But you could write a word processor. You could write a PowerPoint, whatever you wanted in FileMaker. It's usually the cost that holds us back. So, in the journey of trying to create these ERPs and trying to get the tools that people need, I'm specifically talking about the folks that don't know about FileMaker. They usually have to make a decision within their organization, and this is typically what IT does. They look at their organization and they have to decide whether they're a company of more singular processes or whether they're a company of many unique processes. So if you listen to Simon Sinek and his why of business, why are you in business? And he talks about the most inner circle of the why. Typically processes that you do within your organization, because keep in mind, processes lead to innovation. Those processes that are backing up what makes you unique, what makes one plumber different than the other plumber, makes one association different than a different association, is typically the process and the ability to automate them. There are some organizations out there, typically sales organizations, maybe manufacturing, things like that, where they only have a couple processes, and they can go and they can get a software as a service off the web. It's web-based. It costs X dollars a month, and it's kind of done. Now, the disadvantage of this side is you really can't make it unique. If you're a financial organization and you're using QuickBooks, whatever QuickBooks gives you, that's it. You don't get to move buttons around. You don't get to add functionality. You don't get to really change it. So you're constantly crafting your organization to that software to make it fit. So the real question is, what kind of company are you? Are you a company that you can get something off the shelf and rock and roll and away you go, and work that way? Or are you a company that has many unique processes that you need automation all over the place? So if you do pick the left-hand side, if you do pick this side, then the reason that you pick FileMaker is because FileMaker has the database, the scripting, and the interface all in one platform. It's FileMaker. I want to do a layout for the interface, it's FileMaker. I want to make iOS, it's FileMaker. I want to do PHP, it's WebDirect within FileMaker. Scripting, the database, the whole nine. So typically, you from a resource point of view, you only need a developer and a project manager, and away you go. If you've picked custom and you want to do more of a web app, you want to write something that has SQL on the bottom and maybe Ruby on Rails or something like that, PHP, HTML5 in the top. Now you're looking at, you typically need somebody to create the database. You need another person to create the scripting, and you need another person for the interface and putting that together. And then you need a really strong project manager to pull it all together. So what happens in this scenario is this becomes about anywhere between 5 and 10x of the cost of developing in FileMaker. So first ski gate is, we have many processes we want to do. The second is, well, let's do it as inexpensively with the most functionality that we possibly can. And when you look left and look right, there is Access out there. There is Airtable out there. The whole deal. And what's funny, Mike just told me I wasn't even sharing my slides. So here we go. Thanks, Mike. Here's the lovely slide I put together for ERP. Here's the lovely slide I put together for innovation and why workplace innovation doesn't work. Here's the many unique processes versus singular. Hopefully it was like a Netflix special where you're all caught up now. With the resources and everything, and again, looking left and looking right, there really isn't anything like FileMaker. So I think part of the reason that folks have a trouble with what is FileMaker is comparatively, besides Access, there's really nothing to compare it to. You can compare it to all this, but typically at cocktail parties, people have an allergic reaction to this side because they've seen how much it costs. We actually do this kind of development on the other side of our company, and every once in a while we'll get clients that have shootouts between FileMaker and the real heavy iron development, and it usually comes in between 5 and 10 times more of the development. So what folks tend to do then, if they're really over here, but they think they're here, because this is easy. Salesforce is kind of done. QuickBooks is kind of done. Everything is kind of done for you already. So people gravitate toward things being done. And what I call that, this is my own little term for it, I call it SaaS stacks, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking all these SaaS applications and you're stacking them up, and you're trying to make an ERP out of it. And then you've got the you've got the Swiss Army knife in the corner here with Excel. So any of these things that won't do what you want them to do, immediately you're picking up Excel and you're starting to use Excel, and then it really becomes a mess. And the reason it becomes a mess is because now we've got data everywhere. If we have Abby Sinclair coming in and she's part of she's a client, or she's part of the organization, and she needs access to all these different tools, accounting and credit card processing and CRM and file storage and things like that, and then Excel all over the place. You really have data just all over the place, and it's a mess because you have to babysit the data entry into all these other places. So if you're here, but yet you try to do this, you're essentially, at the end of the day, this is what your data looks like. And I've talked to a lot of IT folks, and this is kind of one of their number one challenges. Because they have this stuff all over the place. And the other challenge too is this is easy to just sign up for an account. So they've got runaway users that are signing up for Dropbox that they don't even know about, because you can just go in, put a credit card in, your work group within your organization, can now do file sharing. Boom, away they go, and they're happy. So this is probably the most cluttered slide, but when I look at FileMaker as an ERP, it kind of gives the best of both worlds. So how do we take advantage of some things like QuickBooks? You come to me and you say you want to write a QuickBooks in FileMaker. Good Lord, with P&Ls and classes and charts of accounts and all the different reports you can get, balance sheets, the whole thing. Absolutely, we could write it in FileMaker, but it would be so costly that it would be prohibitive. So it would be better to just use some of these guys when you can use them. Now, in an enterprise organization, if they have some big system that's intaking, Abby's coming in this way into the large enterprise system. The beautiful thing about FileMaker is through APIs and things like Claris Connect or Automate IO, or some of those apps, you can now take data, run it through FileMaker, and then connect back to large systems, which is great because now you're building one place where all this information can come into. So it's not like, if this was drawn to scale, that big, large enterprise system would be there, and FileMaker would just be this little sidecar thing to it. Right now, we're working with several large organizations where they have these enterprise systems where most of their stuff goes on, because that's actually the third version of this, is you take your many unique processes and you buy something like SAP and spend just a ton of money on the product and the implementation, and then you have most of the various ERP things that you need within that larger system. So by having FileMaker, not only can you take advantage of pulling this data together, taking advantage of the fact that you would never really want to write QuickBooks in FileMaker, taking advantage of the fact that you can kind of get rid of Excel. There's definitely a place for Excel, where you use Excel kind of starting out to collect data, because it's really easy to create columns and rows and just kind of get yourself organized. But once you do that, you can then put it into FileMaker as a table, and then start automating your processes within that. That beeping will go away, I promise. So the other thing that you can do is through APIs, you can hit these large systems. Through Claris Connect, you can traverse people's journeys through the different apps that you're going to use. And some of these apps are redundant, like you wouldn't have Stripe and and Shopify at the same time. You might not have member clicks and HubSpot at the same time. Slack and Teams are kind of the same thing as well. But it's also, there are thousands of these apps out there. And you really have to have a good consultant like MainSpring to help you decide whether you want to write the functionality, or whether you want to just go out and get the functionality like a ticketing system and then connect FileMaker to it. Because ultimately then what you can do is put together some kind of, using FileMaker, you can put together some kind of dashboard that has that one piece of data, but it looks into various parts of the organization to visualize data in dashboards. So, what is it then that that FileMaker is? I joke around, I call it the maitre d' of data, but it's really kind of an aggregator. It's a great aggregator that ultimately lands you here. So somebody told me when I first started this company that I should be able to run the company with a fax machine, a beach chair, and be out on the beach. I think the fax machine's been placed with an iPad, but essentially the concept is the same. Here's my one piece of data. This could be where they are in HubSpot. This could be information from the large enterprise system. This could be information from QuickBooks. So pulling that all together really is a powerful example of how you can use FileMaker within your organization and how you can kind of present it to IT. Because again, this guy, if this is drawn, like this is the sun, and this is drawn as as a small planet. I'm not suggesting that FileMaker would ever be able to go in and replace the ERP for a 25,000 person company, but it certainly can provide enough functionality on the large enterprise system that it would allow FileMaker to be implemented within organizations in a pretty compelling way. So using it as it's almost like using it as an ERP, or maybe a sidecar ERP would be a great example of what it can do and how it can do it. So does anybody have any questions up to here? I mean, it's not a whole lot of technical mumbo jumbo, but perfect. If you got anything, throw it in the chat, or we've got enough people here that you could probably just unmute yourself and just shout it out. So up here, I talked about a little bit about innovation and lack of process kills innovation, and I do think that has plagued the FileMaker community for a bit. Why innovation fails? Why are people stopping at FileMaker 7? And not developing for 10 years. What compels them to do that? Well, one, I think it's built into the basic DNA of people who are building things. We're used to things being done. My house is built, it's done. My car is built, it's done. When I go buy a loaf of bread at the grocery store, it's done, it's cooked, it's sliced, it's bagged. We don't go in and say things like, well, I don't know how many slices of bread I want or when it's going to be done. So why don't you give me one slice and then we'll figure it out from there. It's just not built into our DNA. And then the thing that I really gravitated to, as well, is what kills it is lack of process. And I think that we have process for innovation, but I think that it tends to look like this. And we get an idea for a FileMaker development, and I've seen this over and over and over. And you put out the RFP, or you spend months and months and months gathering the requirements for that thing that you want to build in FileMaker. So you've got the IT group on board, you've got the server set up, you're ready to go, you're ready to do things. And what tends to happen is you spend months and months building or talking about building the big thing. But the reality is something like that breaks down to, there's a very small part of a large project that's easily known, that can be priced out, that can be put together and taken care of. But there's a huge part of that development that's, it's risk, it's changed, it's obsolete by the time you're ready to develop it, you don't need it anymore. But you've spent all this time trying to figure out, what you were going to do and how you were going to do it. And typically the questions you're always asking is, how much is it going to be? When's it going to be done? And then, from a budgeted standpoint, it's like, let's go get a huge number. So let's go ask for 50 grand. Let's go ask for 100 grand. Well, anytime you've talked to anybody, again, at the classic cocktail party, which I have to resurrect, I gotta figure out how I'm going to do that. But the concept of that sounds really interesting to me. You talk to folks who have gone through custom development, and it's exhausting, and they're tired, and they're beat up at the end of this thing, where they really get into a period of development exhaustion. And this development exhaustion can last for years because they did a project, it was 100K. It was a big fight with the developer at the end of it because they're trying to get all the features that they talked about 6 months ago into the system. And the developer's trying to wind the thing down because they've already gone over budget. And, they've already spent a bunch of, non-billable hours putting the thing together. And this exhaustion can last, this could be why, like, right here, I did this thing in FileMaker 10 and I'm done. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to do anything more because God forbid I have to go back and go through this process again. Although it may be, that process may be a little smaller, but it's kind of the same repeatable process. And I'm using process in air quotes for that because it tends to be a nightmare. I know this happens, and I know the reactions, and I know the customer experience because this is the way we used to do things. We used to sit in meetings. We used to have a product called a discovery where we would sit around for a month talking to you about what you wanted to do and meticulously documenting everything that you wanted to do. Then we would run away, put together a big number, come back. And then, it was a process to make everybody angry and just drive everybody nuts. So really the goal from an innovation standpoint, because you can have a ton of innovation up here, but it's going to fall off the cliff. You're going to be done. There is going to be no more innovation. So the mindset that has to happen is getting more into a most viable product that's low, that's easy to basically taking this blocks of the easily known and making that your jump off point. So you get that done, the little MVP for whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do. And typically customers come to us in two different flavors. One, they have nothing, they want to start from a blank piece of paper. And we're constantly asking them, what is the one thing that we can do that'll get this in your hands and get it up and running and the whole thing. And I think this has this, it would convey well with management and, an IT group and everything. So doing the MVP, your exhaustion is very small because you're rolling it out, you're using it, things are great. And then you go into a continuous improvement mindset that allows you to do innovation. So, ultimately it's going to provide you a better system because you're going to work on the things that you want to work on right then, right now. Innovation goes way up. Your experience goes way up because you're in a partnership. You're not in this adversarial, I spent 100 grand on you guys, what's going on? Your risk goes way, way down because you tend to make mistakes early and you tend to get out of them really fast. And then you can put functionality in for the changes in your clients, the changes in operations, or the changes in competition. So it works really well to move around and to do things in smaller bites. And that's a great message. But ultimately, it does come back to, I know very few finance departments or people who are approving the dollars that are just going to skip by the how much, the big number and when it's going to be done. They're going to want to know, when does this stop? When do we stop spending money on this? And sarcastically, I say, well, when changes in your operations or changes in your competition or changes in your clients, if those things stop changing, then you're done. The other way that we say it is, when the last user of this system dies, then you're done. But it is a mindset that you're never done, because you could always improve things, and they can be little nickel and dimes, or they could be huge things. We want to do a web-based portal for our clients, or we want to do a web-based portal for our internal folks or departments, or we want to do dashboards or things like that. So the challenge of being done, done is a weird word in innovation, because you can't be done. So by doing it this way, you're taking that huge stack of money and you're laying it down and having it go out faster or farther. So it just works. It just works better. We talk about our mindset in this manner. And Claris, yesterday, this is not my graph. This is a graph from a guy who published this, and he works at. I've been told he works at Spotify, but I honestly haven't narrowed down who the real author of this graph is. But Claris got a hold of it, and you're probably going to start hearing them talk about it a little bit more. And I feel like we were the first to do this, doing pure Agile and development in Agile. But this whole mindset basically echoes these two charts, where if your goal, if your use case is you want to get from here to there faster than walking, you could sit down and do the discovery and the big plan and put the car together. And some companies out there, it's interesting, they'll say they're Agile companies, and they'll put Agile meetings into the various parts, but they're still working off of a contract with a number, and what I would call the innovation inhibitor. So our process is coming up with the MVP, coming up with the minimum viable product that will allow us just to get the skateboard. It meets the use case of getting from here to there faster than walking, but it allows a lot of change. So by developing the skateboard and getting it in your hands and letting you use it, you then can come back and say, we've got a bunch of baby boomers, we're falling all over the place. Could you put a handle on that so that we're not so scared to ride it? Then you could come back and say, well, we got to go a little farther distance. We want to coast downhill. We got to go over rocks. Can you give us a bike? Then maybe we got to go a lot farther, and we need the motorcycle, and away we go. And then at the end, you surprisingly come up with something that's similar, but it's different. And the reason that this was potentially was a convertible is because you got to use this system throughout the experience. You realized that you liked the wind blowing through your hair, and you wanted a convertible instead of a hardtop. We've seen some of these where they've started at a skateboard and they've ended up at a submarine. And it's great because we did it in little chunks, and away we went, and we put it together. So how do you satisfy the accounting department of how much, and the big number, and we have to cancel out that it's going to be done, because it's never going to be done. We all have to agree on that. What is going to change is how much we're spending per month. In the beginning, you may spend more. It may, it's going to do something like this, where it goes up and then it comes down during continuous improvement, and then maybe it dips and comes back after a while. But the mentality has to be something like to provide pure innovation. It has to be a consistent amount of dollars that you're spending on this, and that might sound self-serving, but it may not be to MainSpring. It may be to other organizations that you're working with that are doing custom as well. So how do you get there? Well, we start everything with a product development meeting, and we provide cards. So every feature is put to a card, and it's the nomenclature is it's either an epic, it's a user story, or it's a task. The difference between an epic and a user story is an epic is basically that big thing. I want a customer portal. All right, that feels like based on our past experience, it feels like it's about 30 grand. But we don't know for sure, and we won't know until we start developing, until we put the skateboard together for the look like. Because the other curious thing that I found is back in the day before 2019, if you signed a contract with us for 100 grand to do development, it stayed at 100 grand. You spent 100 grand. If we do this methodology, what I'm finding is it tends to go up, and then right around the bike, there's this weird little phenomenon that it comes down and it goes back into continuous improvement, which is a lot of savings just by working the process. And I think it's because when people are trying to define the car, they're pricing in things like what kind of air pressure should be in the tires and what presets should be on the radio. But ultimately, you get to the bike and you realize, you know what? I only need 2 tires. I don't need 4. I don't even need a radio. We're not riding long enough to even need a radio. And I think through the use, it really turns it into less requirements, less money spent. And when you make your business, selling development by the hour, honestly, I was a little freaked out about it. I think it's a great thing because it's good for the client, it's good for the relationship. We're putting the best products out there and the whole thing. But what I realized was I got to go get a bigger portfolio of clients, and I have to, keep the portfolio going, and to be able to meet our business goals. But from a development and client satisfaction and people working with MainSpring and working within this mindset, it's been great. It's been great for our developers. It's been great for our project managers. It's been great for me. It's been great for our clients, which is the most important thing. But it starts with the product development of big epics that you put swag numbers on, and then you divide those epics into user stories that talk about the different roles and what they need so that they can do something. And then it's got a very good description in it. And then it's got the acceptance criteria. I want a red button on this layout that when I push it, it will print out, this kind of report. And then tasks typically are around the infrastructure. We need to set up a server. We need to set up we need to research something, or whatever the story is. So we build all these cards kind of in this development flow, and I actually should tag this like innovation flow. But in the product development meeting, we come up with all these cards, and these cards can be the entire $100,000 project. We could have epics in there that are 20, 200 hours, 50 hours, 500 hours, whatever the story is. But by sizing the cards, essentially what we're doing is we're putting how many hours we think should be on the card, and then we're putting how much acceptance criteria we should, what we should have for acceptance criteria. And typically, if these cards get into the 13 to 20 hours, I get nervous because I feel like we can pull them apart and make them even smaller, because that allows you to take cards away if you don't need them, and save money, stay on point, and not do a ton of development. So the next thing we do is we determine, of these cards, what cards make up the skateboard. And that's what sprint planning is all about. It's all about, the sprint is a 2-week cycle, and it allows us to do all the development and all the testing and everything that we need to do within that 2 weeks. And we can then determine what it is that's going to make this. So, the approval process is taking the cards, putting them into the development, the sprint. And then when we're done, we put them in a review retro. And, in that point, we do 3 things. We look at the acceptance criteria: 2 wheels, a board, painted, lacquered, balanced. Actually, it's 4 wheels, not 2. That would be a little bit of a rough skateboard. But then these cars that define the define the skateboard are approved. We do an economic review, and then we do a relationship review. And now, boom, the skateboard is released. So then we come back here to the sprint planning, and we grab whatever cards are going to comprise the scooter. And there's probably only one card, put a handle on it. So that's approved by you. That goes into the review retro. We do the card, and then boom, that's the skateboard. Then again, it does it with the bike, and then it does it with the motorcycle, and then it does it with the car. So I'm pretty happy, and I'm not just trying to say, hey, good news, we didn't have a topic this month, so I'm going to give you a big MainSpring commercial. But I do think that there are two things that are super important in order to get FileMaker to permeate through our organizations. And one is understanding this concept that leads to this concept. And I think the other is just having sound process to get there. Because if you're working with management or leadership or the bean counters or whatever, and they have no experience with custom dev, it's kind of this, how do we do this? How do we get there? How do we create the skateboard? How do we get into this development? Because if you've never done it before, it's a little ominous, because most folks think you got to do it this way. Most folks think you got to sit there with a car and plan the car out and figure the whole thing out. But the reality is, you take small little bites, you just define the MVPs, you go slow in the beginning and then pick up speed in the end. So it's really, what is the end result that you're trying to get? How are you, the algebraic equation is, what's the end result? And plus the process it equals FileMaker. So it's a rough one. From a strategy, it's much easier if you're a smaller organization and you've got 20 people. It's pretty easy to just roll in, put FileMaker in, create the ERP, bolt it to whatever you need to bolt it to. I would say most folks that we work with pretty much do this connection. They've got FileMaker as their entire ERP. It's doing CRM. It's doing process management. It's doing pretty much everything here. Very few people get to the customer web portal. Very few people get to the dashboards for whatever reason. And I'm wondering if it's that there is some exhaustion down here somewhere. And that I really haven't figured that one out yet. And I'm having meetings with more prospects and more customers to eventually figure that out. But I think to an extent, in conclusion, that's the power of FileMaker. That's why you put FileMaker in place. That's what it's used for. That's the strategy of FileMaker is this. And if you go to IT and you try to make these equal sizes, they're not going to be happy. But if you make it, the reality is it's a sidecar, you might get a little bit more acceptance, because it's not threatening to them, or it's not the challenge of it not being Microsoft certified. That's a big one. They don't know what they don't know, and that terrifies them. So it's interesting. So I do have it looks like I do have some chat feedback here. The major version of FileMaker are not usually major versions and not worth the purchase price. One thing that FileMaker has done is they've moved to this agile development methodology within FileMaker, much like iOS, much like the Mac OS, where they're not doing 19, next year 20, the next year 21. They're doing 19.1, 19.2, 19.2.1, 19.2.2. They know, with my relationship that I have with the leadership of Claris, they know that the licensing is a bit of an issue, the way that they do it. because these guys all have the advantage of, it's a monthly subscription that you can get in and get out of, and on a month-to-month basis. So they know, and they're working on that. I can't really say, but they're working on it. Yeah, Power BI. This is coming from James. Power BI is a little bit of this, where it sits on top of a lot of disparate systems, but I'm not sure. I don't want to say things I don't know, but I'm not so sure how much of the business logic that it actually gives you. I think it's just something that dips into a lot of disparate systems and displays things. So that to me almost feels like it is just another SaaS app for dashboarding that sits over here, as opposed to something that's really going to put things together. Yeah, Tom Bedard, add more branches. Yeah, and Tom, your comment, if everybody's kind of following along in the chat, get trapped by leadership saying that we're moving away from custom apps, preferring off-the-shelf apps. That's exactly where everybody wants to head. If you had your druthers, you would absolutely do this side. You would absolutely go out and buy these things. But if you're built like this, the danger is you end up like this, and that's what I've seen over and over again. And I feel like that's why people come back to FileMaker. This guy right here is one of the things. It's the shiny object that people say, oh, we're leaving FileMaker for Salesforce. Well, for one, Salesforce is just a much more expensive version of FileMaker. You can do a lot of custom development, but it's as my grandmother would say, it's very dear. Once they hit the cost of this stuff, they start coming back. And I've had 10 to a dozen clients try to leave for the holy grail of, we're going to find those apps that work, and then they come back to the carnage that is this, and it's rough. So customization, in my opinion, I'm not saying that FileMaker replaces any of this stuff. I'm saying that FileMaker is just another club in your bag. It's like it's like having a good 9-iron or something. You wouldn't want to play a golf game without the ability to do some automation of unique processes.
Right. My point was that all applications are 100% customized. It's just a matter of who customized them. Was it a software company that thinks it knows what I want, or was it me who knows what I want?
Right.
So, it's just got to avoid that trap of customized. Everything's customized, just by who.
Yep. And I got to tell you, this can be hard to overcome. Because it is so easy to pay $19.99 for Slack, or I don't even know what we're paying for QuickBooks. I use a lot of these, and I've actually had my guys, I don't necessarily do development, but I've had my guys write a FileMaker app that connects HubSpot, Harvest, which we use for timekeeping, QuickBooks, and Trello. Puts them all together so I can see everything for one client across all these different things. So it's not like I'm talking about this in just theory. We do it quite a bit, and we see quite a bit. Yeah, Tom, I totally agree that graphing isn't done with FileMaker. There's another thing. There's some Java graphs that we've been able to put together that, again, would be something over here that FileMaker would get into. But what I'd like to see is, and where I think FileMaker is going in the next couple of years. And this is not, I don't think I'm releasing anything. I don't know for sure. I honestly don't know for sure. This is just my conjecture. I think they're trying to get away from the annual. I think they're trying to get away from the client server, because I think that's a big thing. You've got a thing that you gotta find a host for, and we've tried to make it as easy as possible with our hosting, so that you don't have to go to your IT firm and or your managed services company or your internal IT and deal with that. So I do think that they're trying to make it very web based. I do know that they've got a little bit of a problem with the database to do that with. I think it's called Drago or Draco or something like that. Bergie will know; he'll throw it in here for us. But that's really the power of FileMaker is that database engine, because it's so fast and it's so the searching that you can do on it is unbelievable with millions of records. But I think the thing. Let me just do this. I don't really, I don't know what the conclusion of this thing is. I'm maybe it's just running out of steam. But what I would love to do is, if you feel like if it's worth your while, or you want to talk about this more, shoot me an email. And it's EALS. It's a little backwards. Although I think I have it set up that AE or EA come to me. But this is all the philosophical stuff that I think transcends FileMaker too. It's not just this app. A lot of the continuous improvement mindset is something that we need to embrace, so that we don't run into the lack of process killing innovation. So I would love to meet with anybody to chat about this on the side. If you've got some perspective, if you've had a way that you can that you've been successful about embedding and expanding FileMaker within an organization. I know that sometimes it can be a 4-letter word. I also know that other people, I've seen it. Other people have developed these unbelievable systems. We have a client that's a $40 million shed builder, and everything they do in the back end is FileMaker. So it can handle a couple hundred records all the way up to millions and millions and millions of records. So I would say shoot me an email. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to get ideas on how FileMaker can work. I'd love to. I've talked to FileMaker leadership a ton about how we do the. There's 6 platinum partners in the group talking about how to embed and expand FileMaker within organizations, and I'd love to get anybody's ideas. So shoot me an email. Let's set something up and see what we can do to chat. So if nobody has anything else, Mike, you got a we're at time. Do you got a quick tip, Mike? Super quick.
Super quick. I just want to note that 19.4 came out yesterday, I believe, or the day before. One of the big things is, if you're a big WebDirect user, it actually has a number of performance enhancements, but we're still kind of sorting through all of the changes it makes. It makes a number of changes to your server, like your admin console is on a different port. And it generates certificates slightly differently. So I think it might require an uninstall and reinstall to configure. But if you're a big WebDirect user, and especially if you're using our hosting, if you want us to take a look at updating your server, we can go ahead and do that.
Perfect.
That's it.
Okay, great. Well, that's all I have. That was a look inside the mind of a FileMaker maniac. And you guys have a great day, great holiday, and we'll get something on the books. If you have any ideas for any topics, please send them either to me, or you can send them over to answers@GoMainSpring as well, and we'll pick them up and run with them and see what we can do. So thanks everybody for attending, and I will see you the 3rd Thursday of December. Take care.